Thus, for the sake of a son for King Anga, they decided to offer oblations to Lord Vishnu, who is situated in the hearts of all living entities. Purport Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. According to sacrificial rituals, animals are sometimes sacrificed in the yajna arena. Such animals are sacrificed not to kill them, but to give them new life. Such action was an experiment to observe whether the Vedic mantras were being properly pronounced. Sometimes small animals are killed in a medical laboratory to investigate therapeutic effects. In a medical clinic, the animals are not revived, but in the yajna arena, when animals were sacrificed, they were again given life by the potency of Vedic mantras. The word Sipi Vistaya appears in this verse. Sipi means the flames of the sacrifice. In the sacrificial fire, if the oblations are offered into the flames, then Lord Vishnu is situated there in the form of the flames. Therefore, Lord Vishnu is known as Spiti Vista. Text 36. As soon as the oblation was offered in the fire, a person appeared from the fire altar wearing a golden garland and a white dress. He was carrying a golden pot filled with rice boiled in milk. Wow. That means their chanting was pure. Text 37. The king was very liberal, and after taking permission from the priests, he took the preparation in his joined palms, and after smelling it, he offered a portion to his wife. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Udara Dihi is significant in this connection. The wife of the king, Sunita, was not fit to accept this benediction. Yet the king was so liberal that without hesitation he offered to his wife the boiled rice and milk, prashada, received from the Yajna Purusha. Of course, everything is designed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As will be explained in later verses, this incident was not very favorable for the king. Since the king was very liberal, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in order to increase his detachment from this material world, willed that a cruel son be born of the queen, so that the king would have to leave home. As stated above, Lord Vishnu fulfills the desires of the karmis as they desire, but the Lord fulfills the desire of a devotee in a different way, so that the devotee may gradually come to him. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Tadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. The Lord gives the devotee the opportunity to make progress further and further so that he may come back home, back to Godhead. Yeah, so that's a very significant statement. Even in the life of Prabhupada, at one time, he decided to give up everything and be full-time in Krishna consciousness. But he was tested. There was one bull that injured him, and he ended up in the hospital. And this is when he first decided to leave his family and take up full-time Krishna consciousness. Then he had this accident where a bull injured him, And then he was thinking, oh my God, there's no one to help me. I'm alone. I left my family. Maybe I made a mistake. But then he decided uh, to accept this as the mercy of Krishna and not as an, let's say, an evil omen. And he didn't give up, and he recovered, and he continued to be Krishna conscious and look at all the good he's done. So he was tested uh, several times with serious setbacks, but he didn't give up. Fortunately for us, he didn't give up. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're on to text 37.
36.
36. I just did that one. Huh?
37.
Yeah, 37. There's no purport for 36.
Yeah.
The king was very liberal, and after taking permission from the priests, he took the preparation in his joined palms, and after smelling it, he offered a portion to his wife. Purport to Srila Prabhupada, and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The word Udaradi is significant in this connection. The wife of the king, Suniti, was not fit to accept this benediction. Yet the king was so liberal that without hesitation he offered to his wife the boiled rice and milk, prashada, received from the Yajna Purusha. Of course, everything is designed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As will be explained in later verses, this incident was not very favorable for the king. Since the king was very liberal, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in order to increase his detachment from the material world, willed that a cruel son be born of the queen, so that the king would have to leave home. Wow. As stated above, Lord Vishnu fulfills the desires of the karmis as they desire, but the Lord fulfills the desire of a devotee in a different way, so that the devotee may gradually come to him. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yenamam Upayanti Te. The Lord gives the devotee the opportunity to make progress further and further so that he may come home back to Godhead. So the different, let's say, mercy of the Lord, different types of mercy that the Lord gives to his devotees may sometimes seem to be punishment, but actually they are meant for helping the devotee give up sense gratification and mundane life and take up Krishna consciousness. So we should never be discouraged by what we consider failures. Materialistic failure is not necessarily bad. It's actually good. Then we give up trying to be successful materially, and we take up being Krishna conscious, which is the greatest success that we can achieve. So therefore, the devotee is never discouraged by material failures. Rather, he considers it the mercy of the Lord. So therefore, text 38 says, although the queen had no son, after eating the food, in other words, this special prasadam from the yajna that was performed, or from the ceremony that was performed, which had the power to produce a male child, she became pregnant by her husband. And in due course of time, she gave birth to a son. Very auspicious. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Among the 10 kinds of purificatory processes, one is Pum Savanam, in which the wife is offered some prasada or remnants of foodstuff offered to Lord Vishnu, so that after sexual intercourse with her husband, she may conceive a child. Okay. Text 39. The boy was born partially in the dynasty of irreligion. His grandfather was death personified, and the boy grew up as his follower. He became a greatly irreligious person. Whoa. The child's mother, Sunita, was the daughter of death personified. Generally, the daughter receives the qualifications of her father, and the son acquires those of the mother. So, according to the axiomatic truth, the things equal to the same thing are equal to one another. The child born of King Anga became the follower of his maternal grandfather. According to Smriti Shastra, a child generally follows the principles of his maternal uncle's house. Naranam Matula Karma means that a child generally follows the qualities of his maternal family. Meaning the mother's side of the family. If the material family is very corrupt or sinful, the child, even though born of a good father, becomes a victim of the material family. Maternal. Of the maternal family, yeah. According to Vedic civilization, therefore, before the marriage takes place, an account is taken of both the boys and the girls' families. If, according to astrological calculation, the combination is perfect, then marriage takes place. Sometimes, however, there is a mistake and family life becomes frustrating. It appears that King Anga did not get a very good wife in Sunita because she was the daughter of death personified. Sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee, so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional service, devotional life. It appears that by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, King Anga, although a pious devotee, got an unfortunate wife like Sunita, and later on a bad child like Baina. But the result was that he got complete freedom from the entanglement of family life and left home to go back to Godhead. Yeah, Prabhupada was married, but at one point he went to his father and he said, I don't like this wife. I want to marry another wife. Of course, you could do that at the time that Prabhupada was living. Usually you could have up to 4 wives legally. But Prabhupada's father said, no, don't do it. You should be satisfied with this lady. But Prabhupada said, but I don't like her. I don't like her. Just let me get married with someone else. He said, no, you just be satisfied with this wife. So Prabhupada followed his father's instruction. He had 5 children, and one of those 5 was a very good devotee. And I met him and then spent a day or 2 with him. He's a very, very nice devotee. The other 4 children were not so much fervent about Krishna consciousness. They were spiritually inclined, but not really very, enthusiastic. However, that one boy I forget his name right now. He was really serious about uh, being a good devotee. I spent one day with him, uh, previously, and he was very nice, very gentle person. Okay, so here it says it appears that King Anga did not get a very good wife in Sunita because she was the daughter of death personified. Sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee, so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional service. Well, that's what happened to Prabhupada.
So his name is Vrindavan Chandrada.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It appears that by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality Godhead, King Anga, although a pious devotee, got an unfortunate wife like Sunita, and later on, a bad child like Vena. But the result was that he got complete freedom from the entanglement of family life and left home to go back to Godhead. Haribol. Now, some people say, oh, that's not nice. Why would he give up his wife? Why would he give up his child? And so forth. But actually, it was the plan of the Lord. So even if you do have a bad wife and a bad child, well, that means that you don't have to have a bad life. You can leave and take up Krishna consciousness. But it's not that you'll leave and marry somebody else. Uh, so uh, here Prabhupada says, sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee, so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional life. That's what happened to Prabhupada. He didn't like his wife. After a period of being with his wife, he asked his father, he said, look, Dad, I don't like my wife. I want to get another wife. But his father said, no, don't do it. So actually, it was a good thing that he didn't have attraction to his wife. So he was not henpecked. Look that word up, henpecked. He was not a henpecked husband. Uh, Although he had 5 children with his wife, right? But he just wasn't really attached to her very much. And because of that, Prabhupada was, let's say, when the right time came, he gave up all attachment to his wife and even his children. And there was only one of the 5 children that turned out to be a devotee. The others were all influenced by the wife. Okay, so let me read this again. It appears that King Anga did not get a very good wife in Sunita because she was a daughter of death personified. Sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee, so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional life. It appears that by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality Godhead, King Anga, although a pious devotee, got an unfortunate wife like Sunita, and later on a bad child, uh, and later on a bad child like Vena. But the result was that he got complete freedom from the entanglement of family life and left home to go back to Godhead. So, before you get married, usually what happens in the you know Hindu families is that they go and see a pundit and they try and well, the pundit then will do horoscope to find out, if the marriage is going to be successful or not, or if they're compatible or not, husband and the boy and the girl. So one time, a long time ago, this boy told me, I'm never going to get married. He was a devotee, he was initiated. And I said, oh, well, that's very good. Then a year or so after that, he told me, I want to get married. So I said, okay, well, who are you going to marry? And then he gave some name. And I said, well, you sure about this? He said, yeah, yeah, I like this person very much. So he went got a horoscope done. And the result was that it was a very bad decision to marry that particular lady. So he came back to me. He said, "Look, I had the horoscope done for my the lady I want to marry, and it's very negative that I shouldn't marry her." He said, "What should I do?" I said, "Well, if you're going to be a materialist the rest of your life, you shouldn't marry that person. But if you're going to be a Krishna conscious person and follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness strictly, then you can marry her, even though she's not suitable to marry you." So he looked at me. He said, "But is that good? I mean, if I'm not if she's not suitable according to our Jyotish, maybe I should look for another wife." I said, "No, it's good that you marry someone you don't like because you won't be attached to her and you'll be easily, uh, you know, uh, detached. And when the right time comes, you'll be able to leave without any second thought. So he took my advice. He married that lady. By the way, they're still married. And and they had some children, and they're still together. Uh, so uh, the uh, you can go to a Jyotish or a person who's can do your horoscope and get an idea, some kind of an idea. Uh, like this boy did, he went and had the horoscope done of himself and his wife, and it was very negative, you know. And so he asked me, so what should I do? I said, well, if you're not going to be a devotee, then you should follow what the horoscope says, not marry that lady. I said, but if you're going to be a devotee and a serious devotee, then you should know that whatever the horoscope says, it will not affect you because you'll be Krishna conscious. So I asked him, I said, "Are you going to be a good devotee?" He said, "Yes, I'm gonna follow Krishna consciousness." I said, "Then you can marry that lady." And he did, and they're still married, and they have some children, but he's still a devotee, right? So it says here, it appears that King Anga did not get a very good wife in Sunita because she was the daughter of death personified. Wow, that's scary. Sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee, so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional service. It appears that by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, King Anga, although a pious devotee, got an unfortunate wife like Sunita, and later on a bad child like Vena. But the result was that he got complete freedom from the entanglement of family life and left home to go back to Godhead. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Good thing he didn't get a good wife. Okay. Yeah, because let's say you have a very good wife, and at the moment of death, you might remember your wife, and then you take birth as a woman. But in the case of a woman, if she gets a good husband at the moment of death, she'll remember her husband, and then she'll be born as a man, as a male. So it's beneficial for her to remember her husband at the moment of death, and it's very inauspicious for uh, the husband to remember his wife at the moment of death, because then he'll take the body of a woman. So, uh, text number 40. After fixing his bow and arrow, the cruel boy used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill innocent deer. And as soon as he came, all the people would cry, "Here comes cruel Vena! Here comes cruel Vena!" Yeah, because uh, uh, it says if the it says in the previous purport uh, that according to Smriti Shastra, a child generally follows the principles of his maternal uncle's house, meaning his wife's side of the family. Naranam Matula karma means that a child generally follows the qualities of his maternal family. If the maternal family is very corrupt or sinful, the child, even though born of a good father, becomes a victim of the maternal family. In other words, uh, the wife's family. According to Vedic civilization, therefore, before the marriage takes place, an account is taken of both the boys' and girls' families. If, it, if according to astrological calculation, the combination is perfect, then the marriage takes place. Sometimes, however, there is a mistake and the family life becomes frustrating. It appears that King Anga did not get a very good wife in Sunita because she was the daughter of death personified. Sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional life. So there was this one devotee, and many years ago here in and he told me that Prabhu, I don't want to get married. I want to be a brahmachari the rest of my life. I said, "Oh, well, that's very good, and I hope you'll be able to do that." So a year or so after that, he came and talked to me. He said, "I'm going to get married now." So I said, "I thought you were going to not get married." He said, "No, I want to get married to this lady." I said, "Okay." So then he came back to me again. He said, "Oh, I'm in trouble." I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Well, I had my, I went to some pundit and he did the Jyotish. He looked at my, let's say, uh, 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 he did my uh, um, analysis of, whether this marriage is going to be successful or not successful. And he said that I should definitely not marry this woman. So then he said to me, "So what should I do?" I said, "Well, if you're not going to be a devotee, you should follow what the pundit says. On the other hand, if you're going to be a sincere and serious devotee, then you can ignore what the pundit says." And then I asked him, so you're going to be a devotee and, and seriously follow Krishna consciousness? He said, yes. I said, okay, you can marry that girl. So they're still married today. Yeah, because the karma of a person and the astrological, let's say, uh, understanding of that person is not valid if he becomes a devotee. If he doesn't become a devotee, then it's valid. Then you should follow what your your karma is. But if you decide to become a devotee, then you can ignore what the so-called pundit says, as long as you strictly follow Krishna consciousness. So that devotee is still married to that woman now. Yes.
So Maharaj, one question. So in this case,
Yeah.
so devotee will be the same trouble will come and the couple will not be affected, or those problems will not come. What the horoscope says, if couple is following the Krishna consciousness.
Oh, nothing will happen if they both follow Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And the proof is that devotee is still married to that lady. It's like, 30 years later. Yeah. So here it says, it appears that King Anga did not get a very good wife in Sunita because she was the daughter of death personified. That's scary. Sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional life. It appears that by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality Godhead, King Anga, although a pious devotee got an unfortunate wife like Sunita and later on a bad child like Mena, but the result was that he got complete freedom from the entanglement of family life and left home to go back to Godhead. Haribol. So it might not be a bad thing to marry a bad wife, right? And have a bad child, right? So it's an impetus for the husband to say, "Okay, well, I give up. I'm leaving and becoming a uh, you know completely dedicated to Krishna consciousness." But often, what happens is they say, "Well, I don't like this wife," and they go out and find another wife. So that's not good. Okay, so text 40. After fixing his bow and arrow, the cruel boy used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill innocent deer. And as soon as he came, all the people would cry, "Here comes cruel Vena! Here comes cruel Vena!" Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Kshatriyas are allowed to hunt in the forest for the purpose of learning the killing art, not to kill animals for eating, but for any other purpose, or for any other purpose. I'm sorry, not to kill animals for eating or for any other purpose. The Kshatriya kings were sometimes expected to cut off the head of a culprit in the state. For this reason, the Kshatriyas were allowed to hunt in the forest. Because this son of King Ungavena was born of a bad mother, he was very cruel, and he used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill the animals. All the neighboring inhabitants would be frightened by his presence, and they would call, "Here comes Vena, here comes Vena." So from the beginning of his life, he was fearful to the citizens. Okay, so I think I'm obliged to say something now that if you or if a person uh, uh, is so fearful that people are afraid of him, that is sinful. It is sinful to scare people and be a very cruel person. So there's a big karmic reaction for that person who scares others and who's very fearful of and causes others to be very fearful. So, but here, Vena who was born of a bad mother, was very cruel, and he used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill the animals. All the neighboring inhabitants would be frightened by his presence, and they would call, "Here comes Vena, here comes Vena." So from the beginning of his life, he was fearful to the citizens. So we have to think very carefully about this. If you scare people, it is very, very uh, sinful, and you'll be punished for it. So let's see what happens to Vena, because he was expert at scaring people. Text 41. The boy was so cruel that while playing with young boys of his age, he would kill them very mercilessly, and if there were animals meant for, as if they were animals meant for slaughter. Wow. So he would kill other children that he would play with. And how you know he's a real demon. After seeing the cruel and merciless behavior of his son, Vena, King Unga punished him in different ways to reform him, but was unable to bring him to the path of gentleness. He thus became greatly aggrieved. Yeah, it's very sad. You have a son or a daughter, but they grow up to become very cruel and mean, and you try to rehabilitate them, but it doesn't work. Then it's a very, very sad thing. Very, very sad. I knew this one family. They were not able to have a child, so they adopted a child, but the child grew up to be a really nasty, bad person, right? And because of that, the father died, and then the mother inherited, had control of all the money that the father had accumulated. And the boy, really was mean to his mother. And very quickly she died. And he got all the money. But in 3 months, all the money that the father had accumulated over a lifetime, the boy squandered it. And the last, let's say, thing that he did was, with the last amount of money that he had, he bought a horse, uh, for one of those horses that go uh, to races and things. And the horse broke its leg and died. That was the end of all the father's money. And the boy named the horse after his father, right? But the horse broke his leg and it died. And boy lost all the money that he inherited because he was a nonsense person. I knew that person, and he was a bad person. He had a lot of bad habits, you know, drinking and going with prostitutes and things like that. Okay, text 43. The king thought to himself, persons who have no son are certainly fortunate. Whoa. They must have worshiped the Lord in their previous lives so that they would not have to suffer the unbearable unhappiness caused by a bad son. Oh, this is true. This is absolutely true. If you have a son that grows up to be a bad, cruel person, the family just suffers like anything. Text 44. A sinful son causes a person's reputation to vanish. His irreligious activities at home cause irreligion and quarrel among everyone. And this creates only endless anxiety. It's absolutely true. There are many examples of this. I don't want to talk about it, but there are many examples like this. It is said, purport, it is said that a married couple must have a son, otherwise their family life is void. But a son born without good qualities is as good as a blind eye. Ooh. A blind eye has no use for seeing, but it is simply unbearably painful. The king therefore thought to himself, very unfortunate to have such a bad son. Okay, so you have to be careful about having children. If you and your wife follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, for example, before trying to have a child, the husband and wife should pray and chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for at least uh, 60, 60 rounds, at least 60,
50 rounds, I think.
or 50 rounds.
Mm.
Yeah, that would take like, I don't know, 6 hours. Yeah. Uh, to purify themselves before they even think about having a child. Why? Well, a sinful son causes a person's reputation to vanish. His irreligious activities at home cause irreligion and quarrel among everyone, and this creates only endless anxiety. Oh, it's terrible. I know families like that. It causes only endless anxiety. It is said that a married couple must have a son, otherwise their family life is void. But a son born without good qualities is as good as a blind eye. A blind eye has no use for seeing, but it is simply unbearably painful. The king therefore thought himself very unfortunate to have such a bad son. Text 45. Who, if he is considerate and intelligent, would desire such a worthless son? Such a son is nothing but a bond of illusion for the living entity, and he makes one's home miserable. That's true. I know families like that. Then the king thought, a bad son is better than a good son. Ah, this is interesting. Because a good son creates an attachment for home, whereas a bad son does not. A bad son creates a hellish home from which an intelligent man naturally becomes very easily detached. Wow. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The king began to think in terms of attachment and detachment from one's material home. According to Prahlada Maharaja, the material home is compared to a blind well. If a man falls down into a blind well, it is very difficult to get out of it and begin life again. Prahlad Maharaja yeah, you see, that's a very significant statement. It is very difficult to get out of it and begin life again. Yeah. What's a blind well? It means that uh, it's covered. So you accidentally step on it and you fall into it. That's a blind well. And then once you get in, it is very difficult to get out. If a man falls down into a blind well, in other words, it's covered with grass or something, or not grass, or it's covered. You can't see it, uh, and you step on it by accident, and then you go down into the well. If a man falls down into a blind well, it is very difficult to get out of it and begin life again. Prahlad Maharaj, we have a blind well at the farm. Uh, it's a well, but it's covered. You don't, you have to be careful. You step into it, you're going to fall down. You have to be very careful. So we marked it, that people have to be careful. Prahlad Maharaj has, if a man falls down into a blind well, it is very difficult to get out of it and begin life again. Prahlad Maharaja was advised that one give up his blind well home, his blind well of home life as soon as possible and go to the forest to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Vedic civilization, this giving up of home by vanaprastha and sannyasa is compulsory. But people are so attached to their homes that even up to the point of death, they do not like to retire from home life. King Anga, therefore, thinking in terms of detachment, accepted his bad son as a good impetus for detachment from home life. He therefore considered his bad son his friend, since he was helping him become detached from his home. Ultimately, one has to learn how to detach oneself from attachment to material life. Therefore, if a bad son, by his bad behavior, helps a householder go away from the home, it is a boon. It's a blessing, in other words. Wow. Text 47. Thinking like that, King Anga could not sleep at night. He became completely indifferent to household life. Once, therefore, in the dead of night, he got up from bed and left Vena's mother, his wife, who was sleeping deeply. He gave up all attraction for his greatly opulent kingdom, and unseen by anyone, he very silently gave up his home and opulence and proceeded toward the forest. Wow, his son must have been a really bad. In this verse, the word Mahodayodayat indicates that by the blessings of a great soul, one becomes materially opulent. But when one gives up attachment to material wealth, that should be considered an even greater blessing from the great souls. It was not a very easy task for the king to give up his opulent kingdom and young, faithful wife, but it was certainly a great blessing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that he could give up the attachment and go out to the forest without being seen by anyone. There are many instances of great souls leaving home in this way in the dead of night, giving up attachment for home, wife, and money. Yeah, but nowadays, once a man does that, he goes somewhere else so he can get another wife and take up another life of home, wife, and money.
Mhm.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Maharaj, in this case, is it a right thing for a king to leave all the citizens of his kingdom for for the disaster,
Well, it
or he
depends.
should
It
protect
depends
them?
who's going to take over the kingdom. If a good person takes over the kingdom, it's okay.
But in this case, his son is
Yeah,
taking over.
the bad son is taking over as the king. Even isn't it his?
Well, that would be bad, but I don't know. Let's see. We don't know.
There's something to learn further.
Yes, it's like another dimension.
It was not very easy task for the king to give up his opulent kingdom and young faithful wife, but it was certainly a great blessing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that he could give up the attachment and go out to the forest without being seen by anyone. There are many instances of great souls leaving home in this way in the dead of night, giving up attachment for home, wife, and money. Okay, well, I mean, it's better, I think, that someone uh, has a good wife and the wife and husband together follow Krishna consciousness seriously and have good children, and both the husband and wife together take up the life of vanaprastha together. And when the wife feels very confident and the husband feels confident, with the wife's permission, he takes sannyas. And that's a much better model. But, you know, uh, if you have a bad wife, well, in a sense, that's good because you're not going to be attached. So at the moment of death, you're not going to be thinking about your wife. But you have to be careful in all circumstances. If you give up a bad wife and then get married to someone else, that's not good. Uh, I knew this one man. He was not a devotee, but he was one of uh, members of the church that I was going to, and he had very, he had really good karma. He was making a lot of money. He had a wife. He had a son, but he gave up his wife and his son and married another woman. Started having children with the other woman, and ignored his wife and his son. Uh, the son grew up to be a really good person, and he protected his mother. He's always been protecting his mother. And the father who did that, he became a rascal, right? But uh, he was satisfied with his second wife and more or less ignored his son. Anyway, the boy grew up to be a very good person because the mother was a good person. Right? So there's all different things that happen in life. So what we're reading here, we shouldn't think that what we're reading never happens. It happens a lot. Yeah. So there are many instances of great souls leaving home in this way in the dead of night, giving up attachment for a home, wife, and money. Text 48. When it was understood that the king had indifferently left home, all the citizens, priests, ministers, friends, and people in general were greatly aggrieved. They began to search for him all over the world, just as a less experienced mystic searches out the supersoul within himself. A less experienced mystic, I like that term. A greatly, just like a less experienced mystic searches out the supersoul within himself. Wow. Purport. The example of searching for the supersoul within the heart by the less intelligent mystics is very instructive. The absolute truth is understood in three different features, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such kuyogina, or less intelligent mystics, can, by mental speculation, reach the point of the impersonal Brahman, but they cannot find the supersoul who is sitting within each living entity. When the king left, it was certain that he was staying somewhere else, but because the citizens did not know how to find him, they were frustrated, like the less intelligent mystics. Well, the less intelligent mystics, although God is in their heart, they don't know how to find the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the case of most people. Although Krishna is in the heart of every living entity, there are many people that go their whole life without understanding that Krishna is in their heart, and they remain let's say, prisoners in the process of birth, death, old age, and disease. And it's very sad because Krishna is in the heart of everyone. If you don't, if you're not cognizant of this and you don't follow spiritual life seriously, you can go through a whole life ignoring the fact that God is in your heart and then take birth over and over again, many, many times. The example of searching for the super soul within the heart by the less intelligent mystics is very instructive. The absolute truth is understood in three different features, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such Kuyogina, or less intelligent mystics, can, by mental speculation, reach the point of the impersonal Brahman, but they cannot find the supersoul, who is sitting within each living entity. When the king left, it was certain that he was staying somewhere else, but because the citizens did not know how to find him, they were frustrated like the less intelligent mystics. Text 49, and the last verse of this chapter. When the citizens could not find any trace of the king after searching for him everywhere, they were very disappointed, and they returned to the city where all the great sages of the country assembled because of the king's absence. With tears in their eyes, the citizens offered respectful obeisances and informed the sages in full detail that they were unable to find the king. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the fourth canto, 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Description of the Descendants of Dhruva Maharaja. Haribol. Well, some of the descendants are not so good. Okay, so I think we'll stop there. Are there any questions? Then the next chapter is the story of King Vena, who was a very bad king. We'll hear about him. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, one question. Actually, Dhruva Maharaja is he has achieved so much, Why in their dynasty we see this kind of a kid borns actually, first of all? Why God select that kind of a uh, test to the father?
Well, sometimes it's a blessing, so that the father will leave the family and take up Krishna consciousness seriously. The attachment to family means attachment to the bodies of the relatives of the king, or the relatives, not necessarily the king, or the relatives of anyone, is not actually a good thing, because you become entangled in family affairs your whole life, and you can't break those attachments. So it's a good thing that you lose attachment to the family and home, and in the dead of night, giving up attachment for home, wife, and money. Actually, that's pretty, what you would say, radical. It's better that you do it, let's say, honestly and gradually. Give up all attachment to wife and family. You have to wait till your children are grown and married. And then normally, what good devotees do, with husband and wife, they go on parikram to many, many holy places together. And when the wife is secure in her Krishna consciousness, and the husband is secure in his Krishna consciousness, they both voluntarily separate. Then the husband takes sannyas, and the wife takes shelter of her grown sons or sons. Or if there's no sons, she takes shelter in a holy place like Vrindavan for the rest of her life. And that would be an ideal model. So you will find in a place like Vrindavan many widows or women who have been rejected by their husband. They have white saris. They always cover their hair and head. And there are temples that will feed them. And they live very, very, let's say, renounced. And they engage in devotional service. They don't have any money hardly. And they're completely independent of the family. And they live in Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, they will always find temples where they can have prasadam. And there are temples that give them shelter also. Yeah, one day I was in Vrindavan, and one lady like that came up to me, and she pointed to a mango, and she smiled, and I didn't, she didn't speak English, right? But she pointed to a mango, and I could understand, like, she wanted that mango, and she smiled, and I gave her the mango, and she was very happy, and then she went away. Yeah, so there are women like that they don't have any, or they have very, very little money or no money at all, and they're just living. They gave up their family and everything, and there's different reasons why they gave up their family, and they went to Vrindavan, and they're just living off the mercy of Krishna in Vrindavan, and there are temples that feed them and give them some shelter also, and they live a very renounced life, and they're always engaged in Krishna conscious activities. And if you go to Vrindavan, you'll see them. There's a lot of them.
Yes, no.
Yeah. Yeah. There was this one lady like that came up to me, and then she pointed to a mango, right? And at first I wasn't sure what she meant, but then I understood she wanted the mango. So I bought the mango and gave it to her, and she just smiled and she went away.
So, Maharaj, is it because there are two ways to look at this one? One is that the king had a duty, he left it, but then it was more selfish in a way. That's one interpretation. But then anything that we do to develop attachment to the Lord, even though it may be somewhat abrupt in terms of the rest of the responsibilities, because the highest dharma is to serve the Lord, is that always like right, no matter what? Though there is an optimal manner, which is, for example, where you gradually detach from the material things and then go into the spiritual. That's ideal so that you're not causing any disruption to anybody.
Yes.
But then a situation like, in this case, King Anga, even though he didn't do it that way, or he didn't, I guess there is no other way. It's like eventually the bad son would be the king, unless he adopts somebody else, and then there's something, I don't know if those were even possibilities. Maybe then he decided that there is no other way for him to
Have a spiritual life.
Yeah, have a spiritual life, and rather, like, it's better for him to walk away. And it can also be interpreted that maybe that's because all the citizens of that also had some bad karma, that they had to go through ruling of a bad king. But those are all explanations from an action perspective.
Well, even Prabhupada, he didn't like his wife.
Mhm.
They didn't get along, but he still had 5 children. He went up to his father one day and said, I don't like my wife. I want to marry some other woman. His father said, no, don't do it. So he followed what his father said. And he had 5 children. One of them was a devotee. And I met that son of Prabhupada. I spent the whole day with him. And very nice man, very gentle, nice man. And Prabhupada liked him very much. The other kids, they started they tried to take away ISKCON. This is after Prabhupada left his body. They tried to take, they claimed that ISKCON belongs to them because their father, Prabhupada, started the movement. And there was a big fight in the courts for some years. Eventually, the devotees gave them some money, and they were satisfied, and they forgot. They didn't forget anything, but they, got enough money to satisfy them. They sued the devotees or Krishna consciousness because they said that their father started the movement. So, and we're the children of Prabhupada. So that ISKCON belongs to us. You see everything in India. India is an amazing place. All kinds of nonsense goes on there. The devotees had to give him money, so he would stop. The court cases. Yeah, everything. You see everything in India. It's an amazing place. Okay, well, I think we'll stop right there. So our takeaway today is King Anga, therefore, thinking in terms of detachment, accepted his bad son as a good impetus for detachment from home life. He therefore considered his bad son his friend, since he was helping him become detached from his home. Ultimately, one has to learn how to detach oneself from attachment to material life. Therefore, if a bad son, by his bad behavior, helps a householder to go away from home, it is a boon. Yeah, so if you have a member of your family who's a rascal and just causes trouble, well, in one sense, it's good because he'll lose attachment to the family and you don't feel bad about leaving and just taking up Krishna consciousness. If you leave to have another family, that's not good. But if you leave and to take up Krishna consciousness full time, that's good. So to have a bad son is not necessarily a bad thing. Why? Here it says, if a bad son by his bad behavior helps the householder to go away from home, it's a boon, it's a blessing. On the other hand, if you have a good son who becomes a good devotee, that's also a blessing. That also can help you go away from home, and have a spiritual life. Either way is good. You have a good son who takes responsibility to take care of the family, and the father can take sannyas. You have a bad son who's a rascal, and the father takes sannyas. So both ways is good. But the best way is that you train your son to be a good devotee, and when you're ready to take sannyas, your son is qualified to take care of the family. That's the best model.
Maharaj, what about the case of a wife having a bad husband?
Yeah.
Is it good for her?
Huh?
I mean, how is that going to be good for her or bad for her? It's like a reverse case.
Well, she should tolerate unless the husband is violent. If he's not violent, but just mean, she should just tolerate it as her karma and take complete shelter of Krishna. Now, if the husband doesn't let her have a spiritual life, then she can leave. So there's no divorce, though. There's separation. Separation is okay. Divorce is not good. So that's what That's what happens to some women. The husband is mean, or he's also sometimes beats his wife and so forth. So the wife goes back to her family. They don't get divorced, but they remain separated. And the husband can do whatever he wants, but the wife, she maintains the children, and she takes shelter with her family. She can, or she takes shelter in the temple, and but there shouldn't be any divorce. Then the husband may change and realize he made a big mistake in his life and apologize to his wife and so forth. But if you go through divorce, then that means that's it. It's finished. And divorce is a terrible experience. So it's better to not get divorced and just be patient and pray for the husband or the wife to come to their senses. So that happens a lot. But separation is not a bad thing. Sometimes it's necessary because the husband might be violent and so forth. So you take shelter of temple or devotees. Okay, so we'll stop there. And our takeaway today is ultimately one has to learn how to detach oneself from attachment to material life. Therefore, if a bad son, by his bad behavior, helps a householder to go away from home, it is a blessing. Let's hope that that doesn't happen too much, but it does happen a lot. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The worst thing that can happen to a husband is to be thinking about his wife at the moment of death. That means he takes birth again as a woman. So being detached from his wife and all women is a very good thing. And that should be developed gradually through Krishna consciousness. So if you marry a very, very pretty lady, it's actually like a curse, because you might not be able to detach yourself from her. Haribol. So don't marry a pretty lady.
I think they're still on the call.
Huh?
I think his call is still on.
Oh, this?
Zoom call.
How to cut it? Do we need to end this?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.